Hello, this is Chef John from foodwishes.com with peanut curry chicken. That's right, it's peanut butter curry time. And what this video lacks in dancing pixelated bananas, it's going to more than make up for in everything else. And by the way, I should mention before we proceed that this isn't based on any specific recipe from any specific country or culture, but more of a composite of peanut curries I've seen from many different places, and was actually inspired by a conversation I overheard. But I'll go into that fascinating tale on the blog post. For now, let's go ahead and get started with the spice blend. So in a bowl, we're going to start with some kosher salt, and to that we're going to add some ground coriander, as well as some ground cumin, or cumin, if you prefer. I'm also going to toss in a spoon of paprika. I'm using a mild one, but you could use a hot one. And then we're also going to do some turmeric, a spice that I used to hate, but I evolved, and now I like it. And then last but not least, we will add our old friend cayenne. And that's going to be it for our peanut curry spice blend. So we'll give that a mix with our freakishly small wooden spoon. And then once this is mixed up, we're going to use it in two different ways. We'll use half of it to coat our chicken pieces before we sear them. And then we'll reserve half to add to the actual curry itself. So we can set that aside for now and move on to the aforementioned chicken. And for this, I'm going to be using boneless, skinless chicken thighs, which have been cut up into some fairly large chunks. We'll call them 2-inch pieces, although to be honest, some are 1.5 inches and some are 2.5 inches. The good news is it doesn't matter. And then, like I said, we'll add half of our spice mix to the chicken, and we will stir that in until it's evenly distributed. And as I always like to warn you, chicken thighs are famous for their nooks and crannies. So take your time and do a thorough job. And once our chicken chunks have been coated with our curry spice, we have a couple options. We could wrap and refrigerate this for a few hours, up to overnight, to let that chicken really absorb those spices, or you cannot do that and just start the recipe immediately, which is what I'm going to do because I'm starving. It's been over 2 hours since I had a meal. So what I'm going to do is head over to the stove, where we're going to brown these chunks of chicken in some vegetable oil over high heat. And because we do want to get a nice sear on these, I do recommend doing them in 2 batches. So I added in roughly half my chicken, and we'll brown that for a couple minutes on both sides. And not only is that going to give that meat a little extra color and flavor, but we're also toasting those spices, which is going to give them a little deeper and a little more intense flavor. And as those finish browning, we'll go ahead and transfer those into a bowl. So I browned up the first half, and then did the exact same thing with the second half. And once all our chicken pieces have been browned, what we'll do is we'll turn our heat down to medium, and in that same pot, in what is now a very flavorful oil, we will dump in 1 chopped onion, and we will cook that for about 5 minutes or so, or until the onions start to turn translucent and get a little bit golden. So we don't need to go too far, but we do want to get a little bit of color on them, and they should sort of kind of look something like this. And once that's happened, we'll go ahead and dump in some minced garlic, as well as some finely grated ginger. And we will stir that in, and we're still on medium heat, by the way, and we'll cook that garlic and ginger for about a minute, at which point we can dump in the rest of our reserve spice blend, and we will stir that in and cook that for about a minute. And I generally don't like when chefs on TV tell me they wish I could smell what they're smelling. I find that a little disconcerting. But that's exactly what I was thinking here. This smells so good at this point. But anyway, like I said, we'll cook that stirring for about a minute, at which point we can introduce our chicken broth. And sure, you could use water, but I don't want you to. It's not as good. In fact, forget I said that. Don't use water. Use chicken broth. And then we can, at this point, add our chicken back in, along with, of course, any accumulated juices. And then we're going to need a little bit of tomato product. And I'm going to use ketchup. And of course, I can hear some of you now. There you go, another American chef dumbing down a curry recipe by adding ketchup. Well, that is certainly not the case. In fact, I'm smartening it up a little bit. Because of the aromatic spices in ketchup, as well as the sweetness in the vinegar, it is the absolute perfect choice for a curry. So there. And then it's time for one of the key ingredients, the peanut butter. So I'm going to go ahead and add in about 3/4 cup of smooth peanut butter. And I'm using one of those all-natural pure peanut butters, which contains no sugar. And by the way, if you're wondering where to get all-natural sugar-free peanut butter, just stop the next person you see wearing leather sandals and ask them where they buy theirs. Oh, they'll know. And because mine did not contain any sugar, I'm going to add a spoon at this point, which, if you're using supermarket peanut butter, you probably won't need. And that is something I'm going to talk about on the blog post. But anyway, we'll go ahead and give that a stir. And then what we want to do is raise our heat to high until this starts to simmer. And then, as usual, we will adjust our heat down to, low to medium low to maintain a gentle but fairly steady simmer. And we will let that simmer, stirring occasionally, for 30 minutes. which is going to give us plenty of time to get our veggies together. And what I'll be adding is some of these silver zucchini, which I find very beautiful. And then I'm also going to do 2 kinds of pepper, some sweet red pepper, as well as some green poblano pepper. And then because this is a peanut curry after all, we'll also toss in some whole roasted peanuts. So that is what I'll be using. And at this point, we can head back over to the stove, where our peanut curry has now been simmering for 30 minutes. You can see here it's turned into one of the most beautiful colors ever. And of course, thanks to the sensation that is evaporation, your mixture will have thickened up a little bit. And we can at this point go ahead and dump in whatever vegetables we're going to use. And we'll stir those in. And then our game plan to finish this dish is very, very simple. All we're going to do is continue to simmer it for approximately 30 to 40 minutes, or until our chicken and hopefully vegetables are fork tender. And of course, we're going to give it the occasional stir, as well as monitor the liquid level. So if at any time you think it needs another splash of broth, toss one in. So I let mine continue to cook for approximately 35 minutes, at which point it was looking and smelling amazing. So right here I figured I was pretty close to done, but there's no guessing in cooking. So I grabbed a fork to make sure my theory was correct, and that my chicken was perfectly tender, which it was, and extremely delicious. And of course we also want to give the sauce a quick check for things like salt and heat. And mine was good, so I didn't need any adjusting. So at that point I turned off the heat and grabbed a ladle, and you can get a nice look here at what I think is the perfect thickness, or the ideal viscosity, as my good friend who I've never met, Alton Brown, might say. So I'm going to go ahead and ladle that up into a nice hot bowl, and of course garnished it with a big scoop of vanilla ice cream. Just kidding, it's steamed rice. So we'll add a scoop of steamed rice, and finish that off with a little freshly chopped cilantro, as well as a few more peanuts. And that simple and stunningly beautiful peanut curry chicken is done, but not ready to eat yet. Before we dig in, I highly recommend a little bit of fresh lime juice. That little bit of acidity is really going to cut through that rich peanut butter, as well as brighten up those spices. So I squeezed in about a half a lime, and suggest you do the same. And then finally it's time to grab a spoon and dig in. And as gorgeous as that curry looks, the taste was every bit as beautiful. I mean, the way the richness of the peanut butter plays against those spices, it's just decadent enough without being off-putting. And you'll hear foods described as addictively delicious, and this is absolutely that. I mean, all you're thinking about as you finish one spoon is that next spoon. And when it comes to food in general, and curries in particular, that's exactly where you want to be. But anyway, that's it. Peanut curry chicken. As I said earlier, I didn't base this on any specific recipe from any specific country or culture. So save your email on how I desecrated one of your national dishes, because I didn't. At least not on purpose. I could have accidentally, but that doesn't count. So I really do hope you give this a try soon. Head over to foodwishes.com for all the ingredient amounts and more info as usual. And as always, enjoy.